Okay. Yeah, I restarted it, so um, we should be good to go.
Thank you. So once Bill is the host again, we can start letting people in, I think. And then we'll give until 5 after. Are you the host now, Bill? 30 people. Okay, can we let people in?
I'm just going to set up screen sharing first, and then we can. Okay, we're good to admit.
Let's see. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are just going to give people about 3 more minutes to arrive, and then we will get started. If those who are here waiting a couple more minutes till we get started want to just put in the chat maybe what their major is and what year they are in school, that'll give us an idea of who we're talking to today. Let's see, we have business management major, another business major, chemistry major, biology major, data science master's student, computer science, mechanical engineering, and we have freshmen through PhDs, biochemistry, um, business analytics, psychology. This is great. We're glad to have so many students from so many different majors. Information systems and data analytics, computer science, chemistry, psychology, industrial organizational psychology, biostats, more computer science, computational biology and biostatistics, data science and computer science. Great. And I see there are many more. We are actually going to get started now. Thank you all for joining us today. I am Sharon Albert Kaplan. I am the the Senior Program Director of the LifeSci NYC Internship Program. And I am joined today by Phil Hammersley, who will also be presenting in the later part of our presentation, and Evan Ross, who's behind the scenes today. If you ever reach out to our program, you may also come into contact with Sally Fang, who is our Associate Director of Career Development. I also want to share that we are going to follow up with you after this presentation. We'll send you a copy of the presentation. So if you miss any of the links, you will be able to access them then. We'll also just send you a lot of the major information that we're sharing in an email that we share afterwards. And we're really happy to have you all here today. Thank you for joining us. And I think we can go on to the next slide now. So let me tell you a little bit about the LifeSci NYC Internship Program. It is part of the New York City Economic Development Corporation's 10-year, $1.1 billion initiative to grow the life sciences industry in New York City. As the workforce development piece of that initiative, we offer paid internships for college and graduate students in science, business, and tech roles. In addition, we also place students into entry-level full-time and part-time jobs, as well as recent graduates. Since 2017, we have placed more than 1,000 interns. We actually hit that number 1,000 this week, so we're very proud of that, at over 220 different host companies and organizations throughout New York City. So a quick word about eligibility for our program. In order to apply, you must be legally able to work in the U.S. So that includes U.S. citizens, permanent residents, DACA participants, and those with TPS, as well as international students who have a work visa that allows them to work in the United States without sponsorship. Most of what we see are F1 visas. So some of you may be applying with that status. You must either be enrolled in a college or university in New York City, or you must be a New York City resident enrolled in a college or university elsewhere. And as I mentioned, recent graduates can also apply. So at this time, if you graduated in spring 2023 or later, you are also eligible to apply as long as you fill the other eligibility requirements. We are open to both undergraduate and graduate students, from associate degrees through bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and all kinds of doctorate degrees, as well as postdocs. We do have a recommended requirement that you have at least a 3.0 GPA. However, if your GPA is lower, you may still apply. We just ask that you fill out a short answer about what may have caused your GPA to be lower, if there are any extenuating circumstances. So what does life science mean when we talk about it in an industry context? I think people probably have a good idea of what life sciences is. They probably equate it with biology. However, in an industry context, there are many ways, and we try to define it as broadly as we possibly can. So I think the first thing that many people think of when they think of life science industry is probably pharmaceuticals. I think we have a nice little visual about pharmaceuticals. There it is. In addition to that, we are placing students into roles that are in medical technology or medical devices, as well as healthcare and clinical care to some degree, and various companies that contribute in some way to the ability to offer healthcare and clinical care. We also have a lot of opportunities in digital health, which is one of the big areas in life sciences in New York City. That might include, say, apps that might be on a phone that allow doctors and patients to communicate, or providers and payers, or can help patients with a certain health condition keep track of their condition or figure out certain solutions that might be available to them. And then finally, we also work with companies that support the life sciences industry. So this might include areas of finance, public relations, advertising that is specifically focused on the life sciences or healthcare biotech. In addition to that, in order to provide as many opportunities as possible and taking into account the many new aspects that there are in the life sciences, we also have a lot of opportunities that are in sustainability and climate tech. So you'll see some of those opportunities in our program as well. We work, as I mentioned, we have worked with over 220 different companies over the lifetime of our program. Last year alone, we worked with over 70 different companies, placing students into positions at those companies. Here is a sampling of some of those companies that we worked with last year. You'll notice that a lot of these names, probably the majority of these names, are not familiar to you. And that's not surprising because part of what the landscape looks like in New York City for life sciences is that there are a lot of startups. It can be an amazing experience to work at a startup. You get in on the ground floor. You are probably working side by side, maybe directly underneath the CEO and other C-level and founder level employees. And they all wear a lot of hats. You will probably get to wear a lot of hats too. Even if you're hired for one particular role, you'll probably have exposure to a lot of the other things that the startup is having to deal with as new entrepreneurs. So it can be a really exciting experience that can give you a taste of a lot of different roles in the life sciences. And here we've taken all those companies that you saw on the prior slide and kind of divided them by different parts of the industry. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of companies in the digital health and health tech sector in New York City. And you also see those sustainability and climate tech companies that I mentioned. We also work with a number of hospitals and academic medical centers. Usually these are in research-based roles, not healthcare actual roles. We also work with some marketing and business or consulting businesses that focus on the life sciences. There are a number here that are creating new medical equipment and devices to solve problems in the healthcare sphere. And finally, we're working with a lot of companies in pharma, biotech, and diagnostics, as well as a lot of organizations that are have some kind of a healthcare-related mission or life sciences-related mission within the not-for-profit sphere. So this includes foundations that might do research or organizations like the Bee Conservancy that are conducting climate tech kind of programming, as well as a number of other other organizations. One of the ones you see here, Biolabs at NYU Langone, that is an incubator. A lot of the companies that we work with are in incubators, and these are places where they offer lab space and office space for new companies that wouldn't be able to afford to do so on their own. A lot of these companies are in one of the incubators in New York City, and working in one of those can be really exciting because not only do you get exposure to the company where you're working, but you also get some kind of contact with a lot of other companies that are working there as well. We offer a huge range of different types of opportunities within the life sciences. Also, I'm just going to stop for a second. I forgot to tell you that if you have any questions, you're going to have a Q&A at the end. Please feel free to put your questions along the way into the chat, and we will address those questions when we come to the end of our presentation. So back to this slide. We offer opportunities in a wide variety of different types of roles. So this includes everything from, say, the lab science roles, like a cell biology and material science R&D intern or a chemical engineer, to things like bioinformatics, computational biology, data science, working in the education sphere within the life sciences, doing software engineering and developer type roles, being a laboratory technician, or working in regulatory affairs. And this is just a sampling. We have different specific opportunities every year, but this gives you an idea of the range. And then on the business side of things, you might see opportunities such as accounts receivable, business operations or business development, data analytics, grants or fundraising interns, working in investor relations, a lot of opportunities in marketing and social media, sometimes sales. So a huge variety of different types of opportunities. And once you apply to our program and you're looking at the different opportunities, we encourage you to be open and at least read the job descriptions for things that might not have been in your head to begin with. You might find that some of them would actually be a good fit for you, and you wouldn't have known that if you hadn't read the job description closely. So we encourage you to be open and consider all types of opportunities. This is just even applying to our program should be an educational experience where you learn a lot about what is out there and what you can do in the life science industry. So I'm going to talk a bit about how the timing of our program works. Our application is open year-round. We launch a new program cycle every year on September 1st. So once you apply to our program, if you apply now, you will be able to apply for the positions we post through the end of August. So that will definitely include positions we have posted now that are, say, for this spring, as well as a lot of summer internship opportunities, some of which are already posted, many of which are going to be posted in the coming months. And then over the summer, we will begin to post fall opportunities. However, come September 1st, if you want to apply for additional opportunities through our program, say for the fall and next academic year, you will then need to submit a new application for 2025-26. We do our summer and non-summer placements on a rolling basis. So the different companies all have different timeframes at which they do their hiring. So some might start in the fall or early winter to hire for summer positions, whereas others might not get their positions posted till April. Nonetheless, we do encourage you to apply as early as possible, because that will help ensure that you don't miss out on any of the positions that are posted early, and you can be among the first applicants. Usually once a position either has enough applicants or has found the applicant that they wish to hire, that is going to be pulled down and you'll no longer be able to apply for that opportunity. And as I mentioned, placements for non-summer roles will continue in the summer. For all those who are selected for one of our positions, we do offer a boot camp. So that would be for each year's cohort. For this year, that's everybody who's placed from September 1st through May. You would be invited to attend our boot camp, at which we offer some professional development programming, exposure to leaders in the field, opportunities to meet your fellow interns and that kind of thing. It's a really amazing opportunity. And if you do get placed, we encourage you to prioritize attending that 2-day boot camp. In terms of the start and end dates of the opportunities that we offer, they are not set, fixed for every position. They are dependent upon the company doing the hiring. So that especially goes for fall and spring internships, as well as full and part-time jobs. It's really dependent upon when the company's need is. We do try to state that in the job description whenever we can, so you have an idea when the position starts and when it ends. Summer internships, for the most part, tend to be full-time opportunities. So you'll probably be working 35 to 40 hours a week. They tend to start sometimes in late May or early June and go through sometime in August. Again, the exact dates will vary according to the company and sometimes according to your availability as well. So here is a quick overview of how our placement process works. So you will complete an online application at this link here. And again, we will share this presentation with you. So you will be able to access these links later. Once you have submitted that online application, we give you access to our list of current opportunities. That includes both internships as well as entry-level jobs. Whenever you see one of these positions that is of interest to you, you submit a cover letter via our online portal to apply for that specific role. And you can apply for as many of our roles as you like. We will consider you separately for each one. Once you have submitted that cover letter, we take a look at your full application, including that cover letter, as well as any other materials you have submitted. And if we find you qualified for that position, we are going to approve you for consideration by that employer. And at that point, the hiring process is completely in the employer's hands, and they're going to decide who they wish to invite for interviews and ultimately who they wish to hire. We do have a list of some of our job and internship opportunities that you may view outside of our portal, and we have that link here. It shows all opportunities that are not summer internships. So if you just want to get an idea of some of the kinds of opportunities we're offering, or if you're specifically looking for, say, a spring internship right now or a full-time job, you'll find all of them there, though you'll still need to come into our portal in order to apply for the program. Here are some snapshots of what our program looks like beyond the actual position that you're hired for. So as I mentioned, we have that 2-day boot camp at the end of May. Here you see some of last year's interns engaged in a team building activity. We really do view each year's internship cohort as the next generation of leaders in the life sciences industry here in New York City. So the boot camp is really a great opportunity for you to start building that network with other future leaders in the community. We also have a lot of intern talks and site visits that are available to you once you become a part of the cohort. You can see here some past year's interns on a tour at one of the companies where we've placed interns. There's a career panel snapshot here. We have a number of those. We also do offer virtual career panels throughout the year. We'll have some more information about that later, and those are open to everybody, not just those placed into a cohort. And finally, we offer a number of social and networking opportunities. And some of them are just plain fun and offer the ability to just reconnect with those you may have met at boot camp. Others might be a little bit more formal. We have an opening celebration, a closing celebration. So these are all really exciting aspects of being an intern in our program that are more holistic to the program and not specifically focused on, whichever organization that you've been placed into. Next, we are going to give you some information of how to do the various aspects of our application, and Bill's going to talk to you about how to be a really strong applicant to the program.
Thanks so much, Sharon. So Sharon spoke a little bit about what's expected in the application process and what you can expect in terms of our timeline. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the actual materials that go into your application, as well as what we consider to be strong materials in those areas. So the first component of your application is going to be your personal statement. And in your personal statement, you're going to talk about your interest in the program and how it might align with career goals that you have. Obviously, we don't necessarily expect everybody to have dreamed of a career in life science since the day they were 3. But the more you can be specific about your career goals and the more you can outline what you expect to get out of this program, I think the more serious of an applicant you'll seem when this personal statement is forwarded along to the people who read it. We are looking for specific and concrete personal statements. And so in this way, sometimes it can be helpful to think a little bit smaller scale than, a lifelong career. It might be easier for you to sit down and think to yourself, I know I want to be a research assistant, which means that I need some lab experience. And that's my goal for the next year or two, is just bulking up on that lab experience. So in terms of specifics, it can be very helpful to stay grounded in these statements instead of thinking, completely globally or in terms of like your lifelong career. You should be showing that your interest is genuine, and you should also be showing that you know what kind of work you want to do. This might include a description of what kind of team you want to work on. Do you want to work in a small startup where the entire company might just be you and a handful of other people? Or are you hoping to have an internship in a department somewhere in a large organization working towards a mission? This can also show that you've thought a little bit about, what you hope to get out of this process. If you are somebody who feels like you can describe yourself or describe your goals verbally better than you can in professional writing, you may be somebody who is interested in including an optional video with your application. And so some of the reasons why you might want to include a video is if you feel like you're a stronger verbal communicator, like I mentioned. Another reason is that like people's excitement and passion about their research or their goals or their experience, all that comes across, I think, better verbally than it might in a very formal cover letter. And so it's not required, but I know anecdotally in my own experience, I've absolutely had a host come back to me and say, Bill, like this candidate's video statement really stood out to me, and I'd like to extend an interview to them. So some of the elements that we'll talk about in the next few slides and already are optional, but if you feel that they can strengthen your application, we really do recommend including them. Generally, you won't be hurt by including a video statement or references, which we'll talk about shortly. Just remember that even though we are gearing up for the full swing of our internship season, we'll continue to post new internships from now until the end of August. So it can be a better option to take some time and be deliberate about your application strategy rather than like getting it in this afternoon and immediately applying. So especially because Sharon spoke about some of the different tracks we have the management track and the research track. A reminder that those two tracks aren't distinct. You don't have to opt into them. Anybody can apply for any roles in our program. But especially if you are somebody who's coming to the LifeSci NYC program from something like business or computer science, it's important to take some time to just really outline why you're interested in the life sciences specifically. So if you're a business major, why are you interested in the health space or the life science space? If you are a comp sci major, why are you interested in data in the health space? Or, what is your experience in bioinformatics instead of just data analytics? So take some time to really draw out the connection there. As you compile these applications and any application materials with our program, make sure that you are editing to eliminate as many mistakes in spelling, grammar, and formatting as possible. We recommend creating your application offline before you paste it into our program, just so things like spell check can help you out. And then if you're working on these applications, it's really easy for our eyes to get tired and for us to miss like those little typos that somebody else might catch. It's completely human. I've done it myself. It's not a great feeling to send out resumes with typos in it and then wonder, like, is that the reason such and such a place didn't call back to me, right? So you never know who's going to be reading your resume. Somebody might be okay with a typo. Somebody else might see a typo, and that might be the reason you're moved to the no pile. So have somebody else check it over, especially if that someone else can be your campus career center. We also offer office hours through our own program. So just check in with somebody else before you finally submit these materials. And then just a note on references. So candidates have the option to include 1 or 2 references with our program. Those references fill out just a quick survey with us. It doesn't need to be a formal letter of reference. If you have a reference in your past who's like written you a formal letter of reference, they can absolutely include it in our comments section. But when we're looking for references and recommendations, we're looking for someone who can speak to your character and your work ethic. It's good if this is somebody who you've worked with professionally, but maybe it's a coach of yours, or maybe it's a previous teacher. If you have a professor where you've taken like more than 1 class with them, or if you've done independent research with somebody, those can all be really great reference providers. For those of us who don't necessarily have those sorts of references on hand, then you can rely on things like earlier teachers, work supervisors. If you're somebody who doesn't necessarily have work experience, someone like a spiritual leader could also even be a reference. It's a quick survey. So in terms of the lift here, it's nothing huge. But we do know that it's good practice to let your references know that you hope to include them. Ask them ahead of time. Ask them when they have time to sort of hear your request, process it, and give a good reference. And that's something I didn't learn necessarily until later in my own career. But if you're asking somebody to be a reference provider for you, it's a great idea to, sit them down and say, hey, Bill, I was hoping you could write a reference for me. I'm really, proud of these things we did in my work together. I was hoping you could speak to, those responsibilities I've had and how well I could work in a team, right? And so sometimes giving somebody that additional framing is helpful, even if especially if it's been like a year or two since you've worked for this person or collaborated with this person. We really only have one rule with references, which is family and friends. You shouldn't be including those for references. But anyone who can speak to your aptitudes, your qualifications, your goals, and your life sciences interest is somebody who could serve as a reference in this way. We're going to shift specifically into the core components of your program, of your application for our program. Everything that we've talked about so far is important and can be a real strength in your application, but we've heard often from our hosts that the resume and the cover letter are really the core components that are reviewed. And so as we move into this, I'd love to hear from you all in the chat. How do we feel about resumes? So how comfortable are we? One, you might be very uncomfortable. You might never have written a resume before, or you might have written one and you struggle to do it. A 5, you're super comfortable with resumes. You've written one before. You maybe even have gotten interviews with that resume. Your resume might even be up to date and ready to go now. So let me know in the chat, 1 to 5, how do we feel about resumes? Good. I'm seeing some responses come in, and I am happy to see some of these higher numbers. I think that confidence is good. I'm happy to hear like the 4-ish from some people. I think ish is a pretty honest place to be. I think that's where I am with resumes sometimes. And if your number's lower, I really appreciate that honesty. I think that is a great place to begin learning, is to admit that you have some questions about resumes. So resume advice, if it was easy to nail down, we wouldn't have sessions like this. Resume advice can really vary. It also changes depending on what industry you're in or what kind of roles you hope to go for. And so the resume advice that you're going to hear from us is general resume advice that we know is, baseline successful. You may hear from your advisors or from other places that you're applying that they have different expectations for resumes, and that makes sense, But if you, follow this playbook that we're about to lay out for you, we know you can be successful with a resume. So the goal of a resume, I think many of us might know this, is just to describe the previous work and responsibilities we've had. And it doesn't necessarily need to be your full experience. It should be all of your relevant experience for roles. But I think one of the places where people can get really stressed out when they're writing resumes is they think to themselves, how do I fit, all 15 years of my experience on here? Or how do I fit all of my college experience and my volunteer experience and the research and the jobs that I've done? But a resume effectively should just cover, the relevant experience, and it should outline what you did in those previous roles, how you did that work, and then what it was worth or what the outcomes of that work was. So in terms of resumes, I think really often people answer the first question for us pretty well. They can tell us what they did in their previous jobs or their previous volunteer experiences, but they don't always answer the second questions. They don't always tell us how they did that work, and they don't always tell us the successes or the outcomes of that work. And so one piece of advice I have for you is, as you think of your previous work experience, sometimes thinking a little bit longer term can help you answer those 3 questions. So instead of trying to tell me what you did on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, instead of telling me, your daily responsibilities, try to think on a larger scale, right? So week to week, like, what did this job look like? Or in a month, what projects did you do in the volunteer group that you were working on? And when you start to think a little bigger, it can answer those second questions. It's helpful to include things like numbers when you can, right? If you call people or email people for like campus outreach, how many people did you call, right? If you started a club on campus and you recruited people, how many people were you able to get to sign up and attend to meetings? So numbers can also start to answer some of those second questions. It's important after you outline that work to showcase your technical skills. We were at a campus event with one of our partners today, and some of their HR representatives mentioned that the technical skills is really a place that's a place of a lot of interest for them. It tells, what scientific skills people might have for a job, and it gives a little bit more information about what you can do. And so if you're going for a research role, things like lab procedures or equipment that you've used before, you should list those in your skill sections. If you are somebody who's going for engineering roles and they need to know if you've used CAD before or if you've used other design programs, things like software can be helpful to include on your resume as well. If you have any programming languages, that's really important to include. For those of you who are applying to roles where programming is required or is a core function of the role, I can tell you that the language is the first thing I look for on a resume. Generally in our program, they're not necessarily saying we need you to have Python and nothing else is good enough. They might be saying, have you learned a language and are you willing to learn another one for this role? If you speak languages, it's helpful to include those as well. We have a few program opportunities where our host partners are looking for people who are bilingual. Generally, I would just be careful listing a language on your resume. If you're putting it on your resume, expect someone at your job someday to say, Bill, you listed this. Can you help us out with it? But if you feel comfortable and ready to be called on one day to use Spanish in the workplace, for example, go ahead and list it on your resume, especially for those roles that require bilingualism. For those of you who are listening to all of this and saying, Bill, this is wonderful, but I don't have any work experience to include, there's a lot of other things that we expect on your resume that can sort of fill in those gaps. And so if you are somebody who has done research that is relevant to your target roles or just research in general, include that on your resume. If you've taken lab classes in school, include those on your resume. If you have done volunteer work or previous internships, include those on your resume. Any leadership responsibilities you've had in campus or on your community or in your community, include those on your resume. So when you start to include these additional examples, things like your labs or your classes that you've taken in school can give a little bit more information about what your skill set is, even if you haven't proven it in a work setting yet. And those things like volunteer work or leadership roles can give a better impression about what kind of team member you are, right? So if you've held leadership before, you might be used to responsibility. You might be used to figuring out work, even if your boss isn't around to tell you what to do every day. These are things that are really valued in work in general, but they might be valued at a premium for some of our jobs. You can include awards and honors as well if you have space. You can include a GPA if it's impressive. Some of you might be getting ready to ask me, well, what's an impressive GPA? And that changes from field to field. So places like your career office or your academic advisors might be able to give you a little bit more information there. And like we said before, make sure you are proofreading these resumes. Early on in my career, I was job hunting and sent out like 30 applications one day. I was feeling great about myself. I was, so excited to hear back from these places, and then realized that I had not updated my resume before I sent out those 30 applications. It's human, people do it, but I'm here on the other side saying, don't let it happen to you if you can catch it before those 30 resumes go out. In terms of other resume questions, feel free to put those in the chat. We encourage you to update your resume frequently. If you're sending out your resume and you're hearing from places back, generally your resume, I think, is functional. But if you're sending your resume out and you're not hearing back, it can be a sign to update your resume. All you have to do in those cases is just to email us a new PDF and we'll update it for you. And we're happy to meet with anybody and go over your resume in depth in office hours in a one-on-one setting as well. If you are somebody who likes to work in a group, we have a resume workshop generally, and we may have one coming up later this year. So keep an eye out. Let's move into cover letters. And I'm going to ask us all the same thing. How do we feel 1 to 5 in terms of our confidence about cover letters? 1 is, I don't know what a cover letter is. I might not have written one before. 5 is, I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what a cover letter is. I feel like I can write a successful cover letter. Yeah. Yep. Thanks again for the honesty, y'all. I'm seeing some lower numbers in chat, and I also just want to point out that this happens every session. Really often people report to us that they have a pretty good idea of what a resume is for. And then when we ask about cover letters, people feel less confident in those. So if you're, thinking about resumes and cover letters, just drop some ideas for me in the chat. If your number went down, if you're less confident in cover letters, what do you think is the reason for that lower confidence? And you can let me know in chat as we move into expectations for cover letters. So I see some responses already. Ankita, thank you so much. Ankita says, less experience with cover letters and less resources out there. Keep those answers coming in as we move forward. So when we think of a cover letter, in terms of the purpose of a cover letter, the purpose of a cover letter is to connect your previous experience on your resume, and it's to connect the experience, on your resume to the expectations of the role that you're applying for. And so for this reason, cover letters are a little bit more unique than resumes. General advice outside of our program is that your resume should be, tailored a little bit to the job you're applying for. But inside of our program, we use one resume for your applications. And even when you tailor your resume for roles, you don't really have to start from scratch every time. For cover letters, you should have a pretty unique cover letter for each of the roles you're applying for. And so what goes into connecting your resume to the job description? Well, we believe that a successful cover letter contains these 6 points. First and foremost, you should be expressing your interest in the position and the company. This might be an indication of interest because you've looked into the company and you know that the research role that you're applying for totally aligns with the research you've been doing on campus, or it might be the research you see yourself doing one day. In the same way that I said that it can sometimes be helpful to condense your communication for your personal statements, you can condense your communication here, right? So maybe you're a business student who's hoping to go into startup work one day. And so your interest in a company or a position might be that this is the opportunity for your first startup experience. So you can think pretty short term for this first point, if that's what's accurate to your needs. Next, you're going to want to state your major and your academic year, as well as the university that you attend. The reason for this is that majors and academic years, since we're all students on this call, those are going to be major screening factors for whether or not your application is relevant. And so now as students and for the first few years of your career, your major is going to matter a lot based on the jobs you apply for. And so communicate that clearly and quickly. Then you want to talk about how the company's mission is relevant to your career goals or any passions you might have. And I think generally when we read cover letters, which that's a core component of Evan's job and my job on this call, we review your applications for everything that comes in, and we see hundreds and hundreds of cover letters a week. Generally, those cover letters will all hit these first 3 points. People will do a really good job about talking why they're interested in the company. They can say what their major is, and they can talk about how the company connects to them. Moving forward, though, I want you to notice that these first 3 bullet points are supposed to be short. They're really only supposed to be a sentence or two. And sometimes we see cover letters spending, paragraphs just answering these first 3 points. What we're really looking for is bullet point number 4, for you to highlight your applicable skills And you know, it might be research, it might be a previous internship experience, it might be a previous project, it might be previous work. You really want to highlight how that ties to the position. And then similarly to your resume, if you can include indicators of success here, that's great, right? So if you're applying for a business role that's expecting you to reach out to potential clients, right? Maybe you've done like a phone call campaign to have people sign up for petitions before, or maybe you've walked around campus to get people to sign a club charter, right? That's relevant experience for something like a customer outreach position. But you want to make that connection really explicitly, and you want to show that you were good at the relevant experience if you can. This is really, you'll notice it says 4 to 5 sentences. This is really the core of what your cover letter should be doing, is making that connection. Even if you think the connection is super obvious yourself, you know, somebody may be reviewing your cover letter who has a little bit less experience in your field. So make those connections explicit and obvious, even if it feels obvious to you. Finally, you want to summarize why you're a good fit for the position, and you want to restate your interest and thank whoever is reading your cover letter for their consideration. That restatement of interest in bullet point number 5 can look a lot like your expression of interest in bullet point number 1. Students will sometimes ask, well, Bill, you're saying the cover letter should be concise and to the point. Why do I really need to repeat myself? And the reality is that jobs and internships these days get a lot of applications. Evan and I are very careful when we review your resumes. We're able to spend a good amount of time with your resumes and your cover letters. When we review your applications, we take everything into consideration. And the reality is that we still see hundreds of applications for the roles that we cover each week. So, you know, even when we're taking that additional extra time, we're seeing lots and lots of applications. Places outside of us might be seeing even more, and maybe, you know, less able to take as much time. So make sure that you are really hitting those points clear in your introduction and re-emphasizing them in your closeout. Excuse me. A final note on cover letters. So as I mentioned, these days, I think people have heard how many applications are needed for certain roles. One of the benefits of applying through our program is that our job board is a lot less noisy than some of the other job boards that you might be applying at. It's relevant to your interests. And then another benefit of applying through our program is that it's less people applying to these roles than outside of our program as well. And so you have time inside of our program to spend a little bit more time on your cover letters and your resumes, and you're applying to less positions. The reason that I mentioned that is because things like ChatGPT or other AI tools are often, you know, described online as like a way to apply to loads of positions at once with less effort. But the reality is that when we read these cover letters, they don't always focus on like the correct information in a job description. Sometimes they'll pull out the wrong information. Sometimes they'll talk about experience that's not actually like reflected in the resume. And it leads us to question, you know, whether that was invented by AI or whether that experience actually exists. And then they don't always necessarily sound like somebody wrote them. And so when I'm reading cover letters, if I suspect something is AI generated or supported, it's not necessarily an immediate no for me. I recognize why people use it, but it's a lot easier for an AI generated cover letter or an AI generated resume to be an ineffective cover letter or resume. You have resources available to you through our program and through your campuses. I'd really encourage you to take a look at those resources and get support from us instead of using these tools. If you use these tools, make sure that it's a first step and not your last step. You know, sometimes we'll see cover letters come in where like information hasn't even necessarily been updated in those cover letters. It might say like, I'm excited to apply for parentheses position, right? So in the same way that you don't want a typo to be the reason your resume is looked over, you don't want a tool like this to be the reason that your cover letter is moved to the no pile as well. We talked a lot about the resources that we offer people who are placed in positions in our program. We also spoke about what we expect out of applicants for our program, but we have some additional events for people who are looking for some more support. So next Tuesday, we have an Improving Your Odds to the Placement Process workshop. It's going to cover a lot of the ground that we covered today, but I think the target audience for that is like, have you started applying to jobs? So if you're somebody who has started to apply for jobs, maybe you've heard back from one or two, but not from your dream jobs, and you're kind of asking yourself, what can I do differently? This workshop is a good workshop for you. Later on in February, Thursday the 20th, we have a career panel for how you might build a startup in the life sciences. If that's a goal of yours a few years down the line, then we'd love to have you there. You can follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Twitter for more updates. You can find more information on our program and the resources that we offer at LifeSci NYC/internship. In office hours, you can schedule a one-on-one session with a member of our team. That's Evan, myself, or Sally. And we can cover your cover letter. We'll review a cover letter with you and workshop a cover letter with you. We'll also workshop resumes with you. If it's your first time applying to jobs and you don't necessarily, you're looking at these titles and asking yourself, what does that mean? What's relevant to me? We can help you with your application strategy. We can also help you out with your, the first step of your career. We offer career coaching. And then if you're interviewed or invited to an interview, we do a mock interview as well. Every member on our team has screened or recruited in some way or been a hiring manager in previous roles. So not only do we have experience interviewing as applicants ourselves, we've been the hiring manager or the person on the other side of that interview. So we're able to simulate that for you and give you really good feedback. You can join our meetup group. Our general email for questions is internships@upperweststrategies.com. And then if you are somebody who prefers to work a little bit more independently, you can review our professional resources. So we have career profiles. This is a great way for you as a student to say, I'm a chemistry major, but I really don't know what I want to do with that in the rest of my life after college. You can click on chemistry and you can see what entry-level positions for chemistry look like. We have a resume cheat sheet, which includes a research resume, a business resume, and a tech resume. We have a cover letter cheat sheet, and then we have interview and email tips and practices. I always forget what the last slide is. Oh, it looks like this is the last slide. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for Q&A here. I know that Sharon was mentioning throughout the session that you can leave some questions in chat, and we'll start to go through those now. If you have any more in the next few minutes that we're here, definitely feel free to drop new questions in chat.
Thank you, Bill. The first question I see is someone asked, what if you don't have experience? And I think Bill did go into that a little bit during our application section of this presentation. But again, you don't have to have specific experience in a work context already. That's why you're applying for internships. So think about the experience that you've gotten in your classes, any analysis or lab work or projects that you've done. Think about those. Those are relevant experience, and you can have that project section on your resume. And also think about what you've done in your extracurriculars that may have actually given you very business relevant experience. And then some people also, I know, just pursue things on their own and maybe have a GitHub where they talk about some of those projects. You probably have more experience than you think you do. You just need to think about what you've done that might be relevant to some of these jobs. And again, you can always sign up for our office hours to help brainstorm that process with a member of our staff who can help you in particular, depending on what you've done and what you'd like to do, figure out the best strategy that way. I know we got a couple questions specifically about people who started applications, and I have directed those folks to contact us directly. If anybody else has a question like that, please email us at internships@upperweststrategies.com. We really do endeavor to get back to you quickly. We have a question here, Bill, I'll let you take this one. Where would we have our recommenders send their recommendations? So if you want to just go over that quickly again.
Yeah, thanks for your question. Great question. So when you create an application with us, you'll have the option when you submit your materials to fill in just the reference contact for that reference. Like I said earlier, we allow students to include up to two for their profile. And so you just need to put in their email and their name. And then once you submit your application, it'll send off a message from our system to that reference. They'll have, we recommend that it gets done in 7 days. We are, I think, right in semester crunch time, if I'm remembering my college calendars correctly. And so now might be a very intensive time for like college professors. So I would check in with somebody with a little bit more buffer time than you would usually. Um, and so they don't actually need to send any recommendation anywhere. They'll just get a link to our form to complete. That link is specifically for you, specifically for that reference. And if they have a previous reference already written for you, they can include it in the additional comments, but it's absolutely not required to have a previous letter of reference. I think a formal letter of reference, those are a little out of style these days. And surveys and phone calls, I think, are what we see most often.
Thanks, Bill. We have another question. For a research-based role, are you looking for a CV or a resume? And that's a good question. And I imagine some people here don't really know what a CV is, but that's a curriculum vitae, and it's something that is common among scientists. So if you are an advanced scientist who has done a lot of work and you're almost exclusively applying for, very related scientific positions, it may make sense for you to submit a CV. Just keep in mind that we can only have one resume on file for you at a time for our program. So even though you may apply for multiple positions through our program, they're all going to see the same resume. So you just want to make sure that whichever resume you do submit will have the relevant information that those various employers are going to need to see. In some cases, that may just be your regular resume, which is probably what most folks here have anyways. And then if you apply for a specific position that's very research-based, you can indicate that you can supply your CV upon request or something like that in your cover letter. Let me see what our next question is. Sorry, I'm just going through our chat here. Would we have to show proof that we had any previous internship or project experience, such as photos or showcasing results? Do you want to take that one, Bill?
Yeah. I don't think you need to provide like a folder of evidence. I think in terms of results, you should know what those results are as much as you can. One thing that I started doing, I think too late in my career, and I can give you all advice and say start now, is anytime you work on a big project, like write it down somewhere in like a document. Try to include the results or any important numbers or information from that project. That way, like when you're going to update your resume, you don't have to think back and say like, oh, when I was tutoring, those fifth graders, like how many of them actually passed their class, And so yes, include the results on your resume, but yeah, we don't necessarily, proof is not, I think, the right framework for that. Let me know if that answers your question.
Our next question is, if we are looking into 2025 summer internships and fall opportunities, would we have to submit our application twice, once at this point and the other in September? So all you can do now is submit your application now. So I would definitely advise you to do that and start off by applying to those summer internships that interest you. As I mentioned, some of those are already posted and we will continue adding to that listing. So there will be more positions probably that interest you. And we really do advise that people apply for multiple opportunities because these are competitive, these opportunities, and there will be a lot of people applying. So if you apply to multiple opportunities, you are more likely to get an interview for one of them because the numbers game will just be in your favor. Then over the summer, while your application is still valid, we will begin posting fall opportunities. Again, this all depends upon the timing of the host company, and some will start on that in June. Others might not be ready to start on that till the very end of August or even September. So if by the end of August, you have not yet found a fall position that you are looking for, then yes, definitely reapply again. It will probably be less difficult the second time because you will have done it once already. So it shouldn't be too onerous. Next question. What would you say are the fundamental differences between an academic research experience, such as in a university or medical center lab, versus an industry internship? Do you want to take that, Bill?
Yeah, I can take that. I think, first things first, I'll say that we offer both. I would say that, calling back to the beginning of our slideshow, industry is, I think, our bread and butter, but we do offer both. And if you're working on a smaller team, for example, like in a startup, in a research place somewhere, generally those roles tend to be just a little bit more flexible and dynamic. What I mean there is that you may be asked one day to tackle something that you haven't necessarily done before, right? Or to expand into a new responsibility area. And the expectation there isn't that the work is going to be perfect. Obviously, it's your first time doing it, but the expectation is that you will give it a serious effort and that there will be some quality to the product, right? And so in terms of those startup opportunities, I think, yeah, the roles tend to be a little bit more flexible and dynamic. Whereas if you're working in like a big company, I think your role is pretty static, right? What it says on your job description is pretty much what you're going to be doing. I think there's caveats to those to that binary, but I think that as the size of the organization changes, those are the effects it has. Sharon, any insights there that I might have missed, or
I think that was good. I think we're going to have to speed up our answers here because
Sure.
I just noticed it's 5 o'clock.
Yes, it is.
But we'll try to get through these last questions and just answer you quickly. What if some relevant experiences happened quite a while ago, like, for example, in 2020? And I think you need to look at these things in a context of what will be most useful in getting you the job that you're looking for. And do you have more recent, more relevant things on your resume? So if you think it's something that is super relevant and you don't have anything else that says that same thing, then include it. But if you have more recent, more senior, more relevant experience, then you may want to leave that off. And again, you can always make an appointment to meet with a member of our staff in office hours if you need a little advice on that. Next question, if I have a STEM background, but I'm also interested in applying for certain roles that are more in the business management marketing tracks. However, I've noticed that a lot of these positions prefer or even seem to require that applicants have a degree in one of those fields. If this is the case, should someone like me who has only STEM degrees bother applying for these positions? You want to give a quick answer to that one, Bill?
Yeah, quick answer there is that it depends a little bit on the company and the focus of the company. I know that we definitely have business roles in our portal where they're looking for somebody who has the STEM fluency, right? So that might be a business operations role in a startup that's focused on biochemistry, right? So they're going to want somebody who understands biochemistry and knows what it is. I would say that if you're going to cross over and apply for those business roles, you should have some relevant business experience, something you've done on your own, a class, things like that.
Thank you. Is there any way to contact employees that are or have been in the roles we're interested in to get a better perspective of what it might be like to work in those roles? We do actually ask that when you apply to positions through our program that you not reach out to the companies separately on your own. One of the reasons these companies are working with us is that we take some of the work out of their hands by doing that first screen, and then they, because a lot of these places don't even have a human resources department, so it might be the CEO themselves who's doing this, and so they really just only have the bandwidth to connect with those that they then choose from the screened applicants that we provide. If you ever have a question about that, we encourage you to email us directly to ask about it. And somebody asked if our program is open to master's students as well, and I'll just repeat that yes, we're open for associates through PhD students. So associates, bachelor's, master's, PhD, MD, really any university status, as well as those up to 2 years past graduation. And I think we've gotten through all the questions, and we thank you all for your patience today and for joining us. And we do hope that you'll all apply, take advantage of our resources. We very much look forward to connecting with you and hope that we can help you in a career context. Thank you.